Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to a new playthrough on the channel. After we dealt with a lot of fire last week, we're now going to get considerably wetter as we play Call of Cthulhu Alone Against the Tide. Like last week, we're going to be making skill rolls against our skills in the Cthulhu mythos. And again, we want to be lower than our skill on the roll. So there's not much more intro needed, as the first few entries will also set the scene for that. So let's move over to the game area and jump right in. Once again, I've got my set of RPG dice over here. I won't go through them again. Hopefully they'll give us a little better luck than our dice last week did, which caused us to incinerate a section of New Hampshire about 16 miles in diameter. And it also killed us, which was a really funny entry where your death is almost thought it was an afterthought. But let's go ahead and jump right in here. Our story begins sometime in the 1920s on the pier opposite the lakeside resort town of Esbury, Massachusetts. Your investigators and reasons for visiting the town are discussed in the relevant entries. Read through the introduction and getting started sections and gather everything you need, which we have. Character sheets off screen, we'll see it a few times in shot. Then, when you're ready to begin playing, go to number 1. The sun sinks low on the horizon as you board the ferry headed across the lake to Esbury. As you set foot on the boat, the ferryman greets you with a wide smile and a cheery wave. He stands by the gangplank as you pass, welcoming the other passengers as he removes his cap to scratch at his balding head. His pudgy figure fills his well-worn suit. He looks a little awkward, but he seems a rather pleasant sort. Leaving the man behind you, you take a seat toward the prow, your eyes fixed on your destination. Go to 12. Okay. You settle into a seat with your thin briefcase resting on your lap, noticing that the rest of the passengers are likewise getting comfortable for the short trip across the lake. Glancing around, you catch sight of the ferryman entering the cabin. As you sit patiently and wait for the engine to come to life, you listen to the sounds of idle chatter around you. You look across the water and notice a thin fog beginning to form over the surface of the water as the temperature drops with the approach of night. After a few minutes, you hear the engine sputter into action and feel the ferry lurch forward. The conversations around you continue as the ferryman joins you all on deck. You can't help overhearing most of the talk, though it's surprisingly banal. There are almost a dozen passengers on the ferry. Most of them are simply looking to spend their money during their weekend in Esbury and to enjoy the various shops and leisure activities the lakeside town has to offer. Many of the passengers seem to come for money, as is common in Esbury. You notice a strange look from one of the women in the group. She has a full figure and brown hair and eyes. She seems to be looking you over, admiring your features. If you're creating your own investigator, and we are, at the top of your investigator sheet, you'll find 8 characteristics: strength, constitution, power, dexterity, appearance, size, intelligence, and education. Allocate the following values among your characteristics: 40, 350s, 260s, a 70, and an 80. When you've chosen which values to associate with each characteristic, write them in the large square beside the relevant characteristic. In the smaller squares next to this, write an amount equal to half the characteristic value and equal to 1/5 of the characteristic value. If you need more information about what each of these characteristics mean, consult Book 2, page 7 of the Call of Cthulhu Starter Set, or pages 30 to 31 of the Call of Cthulhu Keeper Rulebook, which I have over here in off shot as well. Go to 80. So, just to point out that, yes, I do have the Call of Cthulhu rulebook right here. I'll be referencing that throughout this adventure. So what did we want? We've had... Actually, I'm going to turn the camera off so I can do the character allocation, and then we'll come back with all of that all taken care of. I've got my character sheet here. Hopefully it won't be too bad to read. But you can see I went with an 80 in education, which, let me go to the Call of Cthulhu rulebook so I can roughly explain what these translate to. So there's the formal and factual knowledge for education. The 70 went into intelligence, which Represents how the investigators learn and analyze information and all that fun stuff. 60s went into constitution and appearance. Constitution representing the vigor and vitality of your character. Oop, didn't mean to bring it up that close. Appearance is just like it sounds, how your character looks. Physical attractiveness and personality. 50s went into size and dexterity. Size representing the average height and weight, pretty average. Dexterity is how quick a character might be. 40 for strength, the muscle power of the investigator. I've got something in mind here as far as the specific story goes. But now we want to go to 80. The woman clearly sees something in you that she likes. Perhaps it's your looks or a glint of intelligence in your eyes. She gives you a sly wink before turning back to her companions. You likewise turn your attention to the rest of the passengers. Sitting apart from the general crowd are two men in dark, well-tailored suits, whispering quietly to each other. They have unamused expressions on their faces, as if they don't seem pleased to be here. Perhaps they're on business. Noticing that you're sitting alone, the ferryman approaches you and stands over you with his characteristic smile. You notice he's missing a tooth in the upper left corner of his mouth. His eyes are bright as they light upon you. Good afternoon. You look a bit lonely there, friend. What brings you to Esbury? If you're creating your own investigator, now is the time to choose an occupation. The list of occupations can be found on page 9 of Book 2 in the Call of Cthulhu starter set. If you're using the Call of Cthulhu Keeper rulebook instead, choose one of the occupations listed below, then look it up in the suggested occupations section, pages 40 to 41. Make a note of the occupational skills. Then allocate the following values among them and the credit rating skill, rating each one in the large square beside the relevant skill on your investigator sheet. 340s, 350s, 260s, and a 70. Ignore any starting value already mentioned for your chosen skills. Once you've done that, choose 7 personal interest skills and to boost by 20% by adding 20 to the skill's base value. Just as you did with your characteristics, have and fifth those values and jot those down as well. You may equip your character as you see fit, though you should refrain from including any weapons. If you're playing Dr. Woods instead, which we're not, so let's come back here. If you're an antiquarian, go to 104. If you're an author, go to 18. If you're a dilettante, go to 71. If you're a doctor of medicine, go to 33. If you're a journalist, go to 63. If you're a police detective, go to 4. If you're a private investigator, go to 41. If you're a professor or you've chosen to play Dr. Woods, go to 23. Alright, so once again, I'm going to shut the camera off so I can set up the initial character, and then we'll come back with that all done. So I did a little bit more setup on my character. I've got Wilbur Smith, who's a professor, 43 years old, male, lives in Arkham, was born in Halifax, which will explain some of the skills I took. So it might be a little bit hard to read, but there's everything. You can go ahead and pause that. I won't go through everything I did. But yes, we do have a professor, so we're going to entry 23. Okay. You mentioned the passing of a distant colleague in Esbury and how you've been sent by Miss Catonic to recover his work and bring it back to the university. The man sighs and nods slowly. You mean Professor Harris. Real shame what happened to him. Always seemed like such a nice man. Officer Powell said they're still cleaning up the mess at the professor's place. But some of the more valuable bits will probably be at the estate sale tonight, if you're really wanting at it. The man looks down at his hands for a moment, and then back at you as he extends one your way. Anyway, I'm Lance. Lance Sanford. Pleased to meet you, but I wish it were under better circumstances, eh? To inquire about Professor Harris, go to 27. To inquire about Officer Powell, go to 36. To ask Lance Sanford about himself, go to 42. To ask about the estate sale, go to 66. To pass the time waiting to arrive in Esbury, go to 56. Let's ask about Professor Harris. 27. The ferryman raises a questioning eyebrow at you. Professor Harris? I can't say much, really. I didn't know him all that well, but he seemed like a nice guy. I was sad to hear that he died. You gently press for more information about his death. Sanford frowns, but answers. Officer Powell says it's suicide. I'm inclined to believe him, but Professor Harris seemed happy enough to me. More than content to relax in Esbury like anyone else. In between his studies, of course. Ancient Indian history, I think it was. I had coffee with the professor a few weeks ago and he talked my ear off about it. I couldn't understand half of what he said, but he was quite excited by whatever it was. You exchange a few more pleasantries with Sanford before he goes off to finish guiding the boat into port. You pass the time in casual conversation with the other passengers and in observing the scenery. You note the tall pines and the sloping hills around the lakeshore along the lakeshore around Esbury. These features, and the small town beyond, are just visible enough through the growing mist, but squinting helps make them out to your satisfaction. In time, you arrive on the pier in Esbury, grateful to be off the water. Go to 3. Okay. So moving to 3. You take your first steps onto the pier with the rest of the ferry passengers, trying to get your land legs once again. The passengers still chat casually as they walk off to their destinations. You note that one last little flirty wink from the full-figured woman as she struts along confidently behind the women accompanying her, and you feel the 2 dark-suited men push past you at a brisk pace, nudging you out of their way. Sanford gives you one last wave and a smile as he begins tending to the old rust-stained boat that is his pride and joy. The last light of the sun is fading fast, and the fog is growing thicker on the water now. The night is still young, but you would rather not be wandering around in the dark and fog of a town you are unfamiliar with. Taking in your surroundings, you see a sizable crowd jockeying for entrance into the lavish, modern-looking building alongside the lakeside. A folding sign sits out front, illuminated by a lantern. The words, "Estate Sale Tonight," are written on it in large, bold letters. While this seems to be the main attraction, you could also seek out somewhere to stay for the night and set about your work in the morning. If you've not done so already, yada yada yada, and we have. To visit the estate sale, go to 15. To find somewhere to stay for the night, go to 26. Let's go right to the estate sale. So entry 15. Pushing through the crowd, you make your way toward the estate sale. Judging by the number of people packing into the dance hall, this seems to be quite the event. Most of the people here are well dressed, with conspicuous amounts of jewelry and designer clothing on display. You see a broad-shouldered man in a policeman's uniform standing by the door. He has a scarred yet clean-shaven face and a baton at his side. His brow is furrowed in a serious expression, and he watches the commotion through narrow eyes. As you mingle with the assorted academics and collectors, you notice a few other faces that stand out in the crowd. Most immediately, you spot a man in flowing orange robes with tawny skin. He seems more than a little out of place and is garnering some odd looks from the other guests. Glancing around further, you happen to notice the 2 dark-suited gentlemen from earlier, standing in a corner toward the front of the room, talking to a young, dark-haired man in a dated yet elegant long coat. He is of a slight build and has rather sharp features. A thin wisp of a mustache hangs beneath his nose. Most noticeably, though, is the rather attractive young woman standing on stage at the front of the room next to a bespectacled old man. Long black hair cascades down her shoulders, accentuating her pale features and complementing her formal black dress. Occasionally, she and the other gentlemen peek at objects hidden beneath white sheets, the sale items waiting to be displayed. To mingle with the crowd of guests, go to 34. To speak to the officer at the back of the room, go to 88. To approach the man in orange, go to 102. To introduce yourself to the dark-suited men, go to 60. To make your way toward the stage and the woman, go to 22. To leave the hall and go find a place to stay for the night, go to 26. I'm thinking let's go mingle with the crowd of guests. So we'll go to 34, without jarring the camera, preferably. Rather than single anyone or anything in particular out, You feel it would be best to use your time to get a general impression and speak to multiple people to get their points of view. Hearing the talk around the room, you come to understand that most of the people who have gathered here are merely treating this as a social event. However, there are a fair number of academics and collectors in attendance as well. Judging by the relative wealth of the townsfolk, you imagine that there will be a lot of bids placed on the items. While walking among the guests, you happen to notice a pair of men conversing in hushed tones. They seem to be trying to avoid being overheard, but a keen ear might be able to catch what is being said. Make a listen roll. If you succeed, go to 2. If you fail, go to 44. Okay, so our listen skill here is 40, which means on a D100, there's a tens die, there's our units. We want to be at or under 40, so let's see what we roll here. That's exactly 40, so we pass. And I don't think I got my other characteristics set up. I don't think I ever got my luck or my... Well, let's worry about this for now. We might get to that later. So, let's see. Where were we? Oh, yes. Go to 2 since we succeeded on listen. You position yourself close to the men and tune your ears to their conversation. Between you and me, I heard that most of these items are fakes, outright hoaxes and counterfeits. Harris was a doddering old nut. He claimed that his findings predate the earliest known records of ancient India, but that's impossible. They're completely inconsistent with all of the other data, and besides, there's a reason why he left the Miskatonic, if you catch my meaning. The other man nods his approval. You aren't wrong. His findings aren't properly supported by evidence, yet he kept trying to publish his hogwash. I imagine that's why they had him resign. Still, at least a few of the items might be authentic, so hopefully this won't be a total waste of time. The first man shifts his stance and lowers his volume slightly again, to where it is just perceptible. Maybe. And that monk over there does seem to lend some sort of validity to your claim. If an actual Indian wants them, perhaps there is something valuable here. Go to 17. Let's see here. Okay. You have begun gathering information in Esbury. Would you like to interact some more? You may now select another option from those listed. Do not repeat a choice already selected. Once you have chosen 3 options from the list below, or before if you're ready to move on, go to 35. Note that selecting to leave the hall will make you ineligible for to make further selections from the list. And then we have the same choices we had before. Let's go approach the man in orange, so 102. You approach the strange man. He seems well-traveled and weary, and his long orange robes are a stark contrast to the fine suits and dresses of the New England financial elite. He seems decidedly out of place. You open your mouth as if to speak and find him staring intensely at you. Make an anthropology roll. If you succeed, go to 72. If you fail, go to 37. So our anthropology is another 40. Let's see if we have similar luck to that. Let me see... occupation, okay, I'm going to try to finish setting these characteristics up. So I do need to roll 3d6 and multiply by 5 for luck, so I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, 1's a 4, so 4, 6, and 2 is 8 times 5 is 40. So our professor... So Wilbur is not very lucky, apparently. So 40 luck. Okay, that should not be the only thing. Damage bonus probably won't come into factor, but... Let's see, add size to strength and look up the total. So size and strength 90... No damage bonus there, so that's all clear. Hit points, constitution, and size divide by 10. Constitution 50 divided by 10 is 11. That's 11 hit points. Magic points I'm not going to worry about. Sanity. There should be something for sanity in here. I'm just looking here. Carefully about sending this flying. Of course there's no index in this book. That would make way too much sense. Never mind, here we go. Sanity 31. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Begin the game equal to the character's power, so 50 sanity. Okay, I think we got all that set up. So, that brings us back to our anthropology roll, which we want our skill to be we want our roll to be 40 or below. And I can spend luck to manipulate these rolls if I need to. A 29 means I don't need to, though. Because remember, I want it to be at or... My roll needs to be at or under. So I succeed, which brings me to 72. You recognize the man's style of dress to be that of a Buddhist monk. You bow a customary greeting, to which the monk smiles and returns the gesture before speaking in heavily accented but fluent English. It is good to see one here with such respect for our customs. I am Banyu. His expression turns to a frown as he makes a sweeping gesture to the rest of the room. The rest here seem only to seek to profit from my culture. Selling the items of my ancestors is most shameful. You respectfully question why he would come to such a long way to witness such a thing, and he sighs before turning back to you. I have come with what money my temple could gather so that I might save a certain few of the artifacts, ones that your Professor Harris stole from my temple in Sarnath when he came to visit some years ago. The monk seems troubled and falls silent. He bows a farewell, and you take the cue to leave. Back to 17, which should bring us back to our list of choices. Yes. So we've mingled with the guests, approached the man in yellow, and let's go... Let's make our way toward the stage and the woman, so 22. You make your way to the stage, navigating around the many guests in the dance hall. Your eyes lock firmly on the woman, and hers rise to meet yours as she looks up from peeking at one of the hidden objects. She stops what she's doing as you approach, and a smile appears on her lips as she notices that she's caught your eye. She rests her left hand on her hip as you come to stand at the foot of the stage. The old man behind her continues his inspections, either unaware or uncaring that you've come to distract them. The woman leans toward you over the edge of the stage. You can see her makeup has been painstakingly applied, despite her status as a recent widow. You clear her throat as you meet her gaze and promptly introduce yourself. She extends her hand to you formally. Well, aren't you a new face in town, she teases. We get those quite a bit here. No doubt you plan to bid on some of my late husband's things. Good for both of us, I say. Just be sure to give a good price for little old me, all right? She winks slyly at you. You realize now would be a good time to get some more information from this woman who might be the most well-informed regarding your interests. She certainly seems like the flirty sort and would probably respond well to more of the same. Make a charm roll. If you succeed, go to 43. If you fail, go to 57. Let's see. Wilbur is... he's charming-ish at 35. Probably not what I would consider very charming, but let's see what happens here. That's a 55, and I don't feel like spending 20 luck to make that a pass. So we'll go to 57. Yeah, professors are not usually the flirty type, clearly. You manage to smile and stumble through a compliment, and the woman laughs. Oh my! Well, aren't you the nervous sort? Don't know what to say to a pretty woman like me, eh? That's quite all right. I wouldn't have you anyway. You're welcome to stay for the sale, though. I might like you better as a buyer. She winks and turns around, walking back to her place on the stage. Go to 17. Well, that was a little... Well, she's a bit dismissive, clearly. Let's see. 17 brings us back to our list of choices, so now we're ready to go to 35. The murmuring of the crowd dies down and people begin to gather around the stage as Amelia and the older gentleman call everyone to attention. The widow strides confidently to the front of the stage where the lights are centered. She flashes a broad smile at the crowd and begins to speak. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad you all could make it tonight. As you all know, my husband recently passed and, well... At this point, Amelia begins to tear up theatrically, so much so that her makeup begins to smear. She produces a handkerchief to dry her eyes before continuing. Well, I'm very upset. I miss my poor William very much, and I don't know what I'll do without him. And that's why I've brought you all here tonight. I hope you can find some use for his collection, and I know that he would be happy to see his things go to those who value them highly. I hope you'll show this poor widow a kindness by finding something you like. But now, let us begin. I'll leave the auctioning to Mr. Warren. With her opening statement complete, Amelia moves to stage left and allows the bespectacled old man, presumably Mr. Warren, to take center stage. He clears his throat before speaking. Tonight we have 6 very ancient and very valuable items for sale from the estate of Professor William Harris. Though exceedingly strange, I have deemed these items to be authentic to the best of my ability. I have placed a ballot box, slips of paper, and a pencil on each of the 6 tables, next to the item for sale. If you wish to bid on an item, simply write your name and the amount you are willing to pay for it on a slip. Then place it in the box. The item will be sold to the highest bidder. All of the proceeds will go to the wife of the deceased. With that, Mr. Warren moves to reveal the gathered items. Go to 70. Before we do, I need to take a quick drink. Much better. Okay, 70 we said. Mr. Warren approaches the first table and removes the cloth covering to reveal an odd pair of clay cylinders covered with strange etchings. They are small and seem quite fragile, with large cracks running down their sides. Mr. Warren proceeds to the next table and likewise uncovers the item in question. This one is significantly larger and more ornate. It appears to be some sort of altar or reliquary, heavily decorated with yellow-green gemstones. However, there is one similarity with the first item, the presence of the same strange written characters, though these ones seem to have been painted on. The old scholar turns to the next item in question and displays it for all to see. A decorated crown of solid bronze, wrought with the image of a Hindu god. The next item is certainly the most mundane. A large, thick, leather-bound journal that appears well-worn and beaten, with several loose papers jammed between the pages. Mr. Warren senses the confusion of some members of the crowd and clarifies that the notebook is the assembled personal works and studies of Professor Harris. The item that follows the journal is a well-preserved ceremonial robe of a Brahmin priest. The cloth is pure white. The last item is perhaps the strangest of all. It is a small statue or idol, presumably of one of the many deities of ancient India. Made from a blue-green stone in the shape of a rather grotesque lizard-like creature, the craftsmanship is crude and gaudy, so much so that it appears fake. People begin moving among the items, looking them over and conversing quietly. Make either an appraise or an archaeology roll. If you succeed, go to 45. If you fail, go to 61. Before we make the roll in question, I need to take a small break. Let's see, so we want an appraise or an archaeology roll. I think I'm going to make the appraise roll because my appraise is a lot higher than my archaeology at 60. So let's see what happens with this roll. That's an 86, so I'm going to fail that roll, and I don't want to spend 26 luck to bring that down because that'll cut my luck more than in half. So that'll fail me out to 61. You glance over the items, but you do not have an eye for antiquities. As near as you can tell, Everything is as it appears to be and as Mr. Warren claims. Still, as you look over the notebook, you notice it contains personal accounts as well as academic findings. It will likely be a good source of information regarding Professor Harris. Go to 81. Let's see, 81. Here we are. You notice that you're not the only one looking over the items with such interest. The monk appears to be closely scrutinizing the stranger items as well, and the dark-suited gentleman from earlier seemed to have taken a liking to the curious idol. Apart from this, various other guests wander around the tables, occasionally fixing on one in particular. There are many guests and a fair number of bids being placed. If you would like to bid on the items, now is the time. You'll be redirected to this entry after each choice, and you may bid on any number of items. Please make each choice only once, and please note that each successful bid will lower your credit rating for further bids. To bid on the clay cylinders, go to 24. To bid on the altar, go to 103. To bid on the crown, go to 58. To bid on the journal, go to 6. To bid on the ceremonial robe, go to 30. To bid on the strange idol, go to 92. If you are unable or do not wish to bid on any further items, go to 16. I think we'll definitely make a bid on the journal because that looks like it's going to be useful. We could use probably some personal information. You feel that the information in the journal is essential to your interests and you cannot help but make a bid. You place your paper with the others and hope that Mr. Warren calls your name when the amounts are compared. Make an appraise or credit rating roll. If you succeed, go to 100. If you fail, go to 14. Both are 60, so either way we'd be making this roll. So we're just going to roll against a 60. That's a 51, so we pass. That brings us to 14. What? Wait a minute, hold on. I want to go to 100 actually, because we passed. Derp. You feel that the knowledge in these pages these pages could very well prove essential to you, so you offer a price that is more than fair. Sure enough, Mr. Warren calls your name and presses the leather-bound tome into your eager hands. Reduce your credit rating by 2 percentiles. Go to 81. Which should bring us back to the choices. So we have the notebook now. I don't know what they're going to call it, so I'm going to note both notebook and journal, but we have to reduce our credit rating by 2 points. So 58, half is 29, fifth is 11. Let's see, so we bid on the journal. Let's bid on the idol next. Something draws you to the curious idol, and you feel compelled to make a bid. You notice that you're not alone in this, as the monk and one of the dark-suited men both place bids of their own into the box. You hope yours is high enough. Make an appraise or credit rating roll, both at extreme difficulty. Success only at equal to or below 1/5 of the skill value. If you succeed, go to 86. If you fail, go to 154. So we're going to make a... let's just use appraise, right? Yes. So I'm going to make an appraise rating at extreme difficulty. So for this, I need to be at a 12 or less. And I don't like my odds of that. That's an 84, so that's a yeah, right. I can't even spend enough luck to get that down. So, 154. Though you put a sizable bid in for the idol, a truly outrageous sum is called, easily twice what you offered. Mr. Warren squints hard at the paper before calling out the staggering price and an unfamiliar-sounding name. Banyu. Confused whispers break out as the orange-robed monk collects the statue with a look of excitement on his face. Go to 81. Okay, that's back to our choices again. 81. Okay, so we bid on the notebook and the journal, and we got that. The idol was a flop. Let's bid on the crown next, so 58. You decide to place a bid on the crown and affix your name and a suitable price to a slip of paper, which finds its way into the box. You wait patiently for Mr. Warren to announce the highest bidder. Make an appraise or credit rating roll. If you succeed, go to 64. If you fail, go to 94. We'll stick with making an appraise roll at 60. That's a 39, so we pass. Let's see, that was the... oh, right, the crown. So the crown was a success, which will send us to 64. You pay a considerable sum, but the Indian crown is now yours. You smile with satisfaction as you tuck the bronze headpiece into your briefcase. Reduce your credit rating by another 2 percentiles and go to 81. That brings me down to 56. Half is now 28. The fifth is still 11, so back to 81. Let's see here. So we bid on the notebook, the idol, and the crown. Let's try for the robe. The ceremonial robe catches your eye, and you settle on placing a bid. You sign your name on a slip of paper with a realistic price and put your submission in with the rest. You wait for Mr. Warren to call out the robe's winner. Make an appraise or credit rating roll. If you succeed, go to 52. If you fail, 48. So we'll stick with appraise again at 60. Let me just make a note here. This is the robe we're bidding on now. And that's an 83, so we fail that. Let's see here, so which sends us to 48. It would seem one of the other collectors here wants this particular item more than you. The robe is sold for a higher price than you expected, and to someone other than yourself. Go to 81. Okay, so what do we have left to bid on? Let's see, so we have... Let's go for the altar next, but I expect that to be a tough one to get. Let's see, the altar goes to 103. You decide on a fair bid for the gemstoned altar and submit your offer. Not long after that, Mr. Warren empties the box and begins sifting through the entries for the highest bid. Make an appraise or credit rating roll, both at hard difficulty, equal to or below half the skill value. Succeed to 19, fail to 59. We're going to make another appraise roll. This one's at hard difficulty, so we want to be at or below 30. Which that's a 73. That was a 73. Making it 71 wouldn't make a difference, so we are not going to spend on that. Right, 59. Mr. Warren takes his time mulling over the names and figures before calling out the name of a Dexter James. One of the dark-suited men from earlier comes forward to claim the altar. Go to 81. Okay. The only thing left is the clay cylinders, so we might as well. Alright, so that sends us to 24. Right. You write a reasonable bid for the pair of clay cylinders and place it in the box. Shortly after you do, Mr. Warren clears the box and begins checking the bids. Make an appraiser credit rating roll both at hard difficulty. Succeed to 38, fail to 73. So appraise once again at 30. That's a 94. That's a yeah. That's even more of a yeah, right. I don't have 64 luck to bring that down to a pass. So that sends us to, where was it? 73. Though you wish to buy the curious clay cylinders, someone else placed a higher bid. You hear Mr. Warren announce the name Arthur Duncan and see one of the dark-suited pair approach and take the item from him. Go to 81. So that's everything, which brings us back to 16. Your business here is completed. You see the crowd staring covetously at the newly acquired items, and you spot Amelia looking smug and satisfied with a leather bag full of cash. Mr. Warren begins to clear away the tables while Officer Powell stands by the door and directs people out of the building and into the ever-thickening fog. Though some seem content to stay and socialize, you feel that it would be best to go bed down for the night. Go to 26. While the estate sale seems interesting, and it was, you would feel more secure with a roof over your head for the night. You pull someone out of the crowd and inquire as to where you can find a room to rent. You're directed a few blocks into town to a modestly priced hotel, a few buildings down from Esbury's police station. As you enter in from the cool night air, you're greeted by the heat of a roaring fire. The small front room feels stuffy and cramped. The bulk of the space is dominated by the large service counter, behind which sits a wiry-looking wisp of a woman. She turns her eyes wide to you and asks your name, then quotes you a price that's more than fair. With the transaction complete, you haul your thin briefcase up the stairs, unpack it, and settle into your room for the night. Go to 9. With a couple of new possessions from the estate sale. You wake in the morning, grateful for the rest. You rise from your bed and take in the modest surroundings that make up your room. The furnishings are sparse. A small poor-quality dresser and a cramped, dusty writing desk tucked in the corner. Sitting atop the desk is a plate of eggs and toast, apparently set out for you by the hotel's owner. The walls are plain and unadorned, save for a single window that faces toward the lake. However, this view is blocked by the incredibly thick fog, which has taken on a pale green hue. Your vision is obscured entirely, and you cannot see into the depths of that outlandish green mist. You also notice your personal belongings placed around the room exactly as you left them the night before. Go to 106. Okay, entry 106. Here we are. After getting dressed and eating the modest breakfast set out for you, you're ready to begin your day. You take a moment to consider what that means for you. Your mind turns to Professor Harris. If you're so inclined, you might be able to investigate the circumstances of his death further. Considering that you don't have his widow Amelia's address, you would have to start your search with the official report filed with Officer Powell at the police station. Alternatively, you could take this free time to look through your belongings and examine any items you might have. The hotel owner has been in your room, so a check of your things might be in order. Or perhaps you have some other reason to look over your possessions. Finally, if you feel that your business in Esbury is concluded, you could always try to find Lance Sanford at the ferry. To go to the police station, go to 11. To look over your items, go to 32. To go to the ferry, go to 153. I think the first thing I want to do here is make sure there's no change with my belongings. So go to 32. cursory inspection of your personal belongings reveal that nothing is amiss. All your possessions are just as you left them. While you were here looking things over, you can take this opportunity to more closely scrutinize items bought at the auction. Alternatively, you may leave and go explore elsewhere if your curiosity is satisfied. After examining each item, you'll be redirected to this entry or given the option to proceed as appropriate. If you have none of the items or are done looking over what you bought, choose to investigate elsewhere. Of this list, the only thing we bought was the journal. So that will bring us to 74. Though you glanced at the notebook during the estate sale, you haven't had time to properly look it over until now. Reading through the book, you become deeply engrossed and spend the next few hours in study. The time spent yields valuable information. Professor Harris made several trips to India, starting about 12 years ago. During these visits, he went to multiple sites to make observations and recover artifacts. His longest and most profitable trip appears to have been 10 years ago, during an excursion to Sarnath, India, where he writes about recovering several items from an active Buddhist shrine, one of which being an idol, maybe? Apparently, Professor Harris had some regrets about this theft, but he couldn't resist taking the artifacts for his personal collection. The description of the items he came across in Sarnath matched some of the items at the estate sale last night. The clay cylinder, the gemstone-encrusted altar, and the lizard-like idol are all described in detail in the entries related to his trip to Sarnath. These same items then appear throughout the rest of his journal. He'd clearly been studying them over the past decade and developed something of a fixation with them. It was the idol that initially caught Harris's eye, and according to him, the depiction of the great and grotesque water lizard matched no description of any known Hindu deity. Hoping to find clues to the idol's identity, Harris set about trying to translate the mysterious script on the cylinders and the altar. In doing so, he met with significant difficulty, as the text was only barely recognizable as an archaic dialect of a pre-Sanskrit language. The process was slow and painstaking until about a year ago. At this time, Professor Harris writes of having a strange and enlightening dream. He reports walking in the ancient world from whence these items originated, a grand city of marble walls and onyx streets, of bronze gates and marvelous palaces and gardens. He writes of visiting the 17 tower temples of this ancient city and meeting the bearded gods who dwelled there, sat upon their ivory thrones. Harris calls the strange place Sarnath, despite the sheer impossibility of this. He claims that among the temples he learned the secrets of the ancient writing. His next entry goes on to describe the odd clay cylinders as the brick cylinders of Kadatharan. Though he hadn't yet identified the other objects, the next few pages have been torn from the journal. The entries resume with more mundane matters, though there are still references to the artifacts from time to time. The most recent entries in the journal speak of Harris's daily studies and living with Amelia. It's clear that he cared about her deeply from the way he writes about her, but he laments that his studies keep him from spending the time with her that he would like. Instead, he lavished her with gifts and money, which she was all too happy to accept. He notes that Amelia had never been happier despite the distance between them. The last entry to catch your eye is dated over a week ago. Apparently, the pages torn from his journal went missing only recently. Professor Harris expresses deep concern at this, as there were no signs of forced entry to his study, and only he and Amelia had access to it, though he was sure he hadn't removed them from the journal himself. You finish your reading by glossing over the last week of the professor's life, which is rather uneventful and peaceful beyond his continued obsession with the artifacts and his occasional worries about Amelia. Go to 32. Which I believe sends us back to the list of the items, yes. Which means now we have a decision to make. Do we go to the police station or go to the ferry? Before I make that decision, I need to take a small break. Okay, so we had a decision to make. We either go to the police station or go to the ferry. I'm not sure how receptive the police are going to be to somebody investigating on their own, so let's go to the ferry. Go to 153. You pause to consider the strange green coloration of the fog and its incredible thickness. You wonder if it's even safe to be out on the water with visibility so limited. You decide to head to the docks first to see if the ferry is still running before hauling all of your possessions down to the lakeshore. You venture out into the cloying green mist and walk briskly toward the docks. You arrive to find Sanford pacing the deck of his boat with a small flask in his hand. He stares out into the fog, lost in thought before you rouse him by inquiring about passage out of town. He confirms your fears. Sorry, I can't take her out like this. I can hardly see 3 feet in front of me. The lake is fairly tame, but I have no way of telling where the shore is or if any other boats might be out on the water. I like you, but it's too dangerous. I just can't risk it. I've rarely seen a fog this thick. And this green, never seen anything like it. I'm staying put. You know that nothing you say could possibly convince him. Resigned to your fate, you head back toward the rest of town. To visit the police station, go to 11. To return to the hotel, go to 122. I don't want to involve the police until I have to at this point, so let's return to the hotel back to 122. Okay, come on. 122. There we go. It took a while to turn off. Okay. Feeling that it's the best course of action right now, you return to your room at the hotel. You turn the key in the lock and your door swings open to reveal a startling scene. Your room has been ransacked, the bed is overturned, and the covers are strewn about. The dresser drawers have all been pulled out and emptied. Your briefcase lies open on the floor. Anything of value you had is gone. Anything you may have gained from the estate sale is no longer in your possession. And anything you brought with you beyond the basic essentials is likewise missing. The window hangs open, letting the greenish mist into the room. You close it to keep out the chill and begin to set things straight while you overcome the shock of what has happened. As you consider your options, the sounds of a loud and violent commotion drift in from the room next door. To ignore the scuffle, go to 109. To investigate, go to 142. I want to see if the scuffle is related to how we lost our possessions. So let's go to 142. Feeling that someone might be in danger, or perhaps that this commotion is somehow related to the theft from your room, you rush to investigate. You find the adjacent room's door open, and inside you discover a large and familiar-looking man in a dark suit. He looms over the prone body of a beaten and bloodied Buddhist monk. The man in the suit has clearly worked him over. The suited man has his back to you, and you doubt you've been noticed yet. With a little luck, you might be able to get the drop on him and subdue him quickly. Alternatively, if you have come into a possession of a firearm during your stay in Esbury, you could always resort to lethal force. And we haven't. To subdue the man, make a fighting, brawling roll with a bonus die for surprise. If you succeed, go to 97. If you fail, take 1d3 damage. If you survive this, go to 129. However, if this reduces you to 0 hit points, the man beats you to death. Your visit in Esbury is over. The end. So a bonus die means we get to roll the tens die twice and take the lower of the two. So we are going to have to make a brawling roll against a 25. So let's see what we can do here. That's a 95, so we do get the bonus die. That's a 75, which is still a fail, so we take 1d3 damage, which means we're going to roll a d6, divide the result by 2, rounding up. Actually, up. So 2 is 1 damage, which brings us down to 10 HP. Alright, so we survived that, which sends us to 129. You take a step toward the man. He hears your approach and rounds on you, swinging wildly with a shout of surprise. His fist catches you in the chest and sends you sprawling backward. He throws himself on top of you, landing blow after blow with his fists. You raise your arm to fend off the worst of his fury as he works you over. Amid the confusion, you glance up to see the monk running out of the room. Finally, the man in the suit grabs you by the collar and begins slamming you violently against the floor. It only takes a few blows before you lose consciousness. Go to 138. Oh boy. 138. You awake, stripped of any weapons and tied to a chair in a dusty basement. The first thing you notice is the pain from your wounds. They're still fresh and have not been tended into in any way. The second thing you notice is the table across from you with its strange collection of items. A pair of cracked clay cylinders, a gemstone-studded altar with curious scrawls, a stack of papers, and an unnatural-looking idol of sea-green stone fashioned in the shape of a lizard-like creature. Standing next to the table is a man you can't quite make out in the dimness of the room. He puffs absently at a cigarette as he stares at you. Behind the table is a still and other bootlegging equipment. You turn your head to see one of the suited men from before, leaning against the door, sipping from a flask. When you begin to move, the unknown man walks over to you. He grins wildly, and you spot a glint of madness in his eyes as he hovers at the edge of the illuminated area. He produces a knife from his pocket, and the blade catches the glimmer of the dim bulb flickering above. The man shoots a glance at the suited man by the door, who nods, then leaves. The remaining man comes into the light and presses the knife against your cheek. It digs into your flesh, nicking you and drawing a drop of blood on the tip. Thought you'd cause trouble for Josh, eh? I'm going to enjoy this, getting rid of my little problem. Everything was fine until you started snooping around. You're putting me and Amelia both in danger here, and you're getting in the way of my plans. So, I'm going to enjoy tearing open your throat and offering up your life to the idol. Perhaps it will please him, and then I'll get what I want. I'll finally make my way to that beautiful place that I've seen in my dreams. It will be over soon, but I will bleed you slow, because I want to enjoy this. He takes the knife and presses it in deeper. You struggle reflexively against your bonds, trying to escape the pain. Perhaps if you struggle enough, you can break free. Make a strength roll. If you succeed, go to 115. If you fail, go to 69. Oh boy. Make a strength roll against a 40. Yikes. This is not going to be good. That's a 22, so we actually pass as I drop the cup. So that sends me to 115. You struggle against your bonds as you begin to panic. Mercifully, they give way. Joshua is shocked by the sound of snapping rope echoing off the walls, and he jumps away from you on pure reflex. You act on instinct. Without thinking, you rush toward him, attempting to wrestle the knife from his grasp. You know that you need to be the one in control of the weapon if you're going to survive this, especially as there is another armed man just outside the door. You grasp Joshua's forearm, preventing him from attacking you with the knife. You then try to pry it from his hand, even as you jab and strike at him with knees and elbows, hoping desperately that you can snatch the blade from his grip. Make a fighting brawl roll. If you succeed, go to 133. If you fail, go to 180. We're back to another brawl roll, which is not a great roll. We weren't able to make this work with a bonus die. This time we don't have the bonus die against the 25. We don't need it somehow. That's a 9. So we pass. Apparently he's not that strong. Let's see, 133. You throw a punch at Joshua's face and send him stumbling backward, stunned. You manage to rip the knife from his grasp as he regains his footing. You take the blade and swiftly plunge it into his chest. Joshua takes on a pained and shocked expression, as if offended that you dare to kill him. Still, he slumps to his knees. He looks up at you as he begins to die. His eyes glaze over and stare at you with a smoldering malevolence. Strange words pass from his lips as the last of his life fades away. Bakragran Bethung Gift Eye. A last shuddering breath rattles his body, and he slumps into a lifeless heap at your feet. You feel greatly disturbed by this, but you attempt to shake it off and move on. You survey the room. The table at the far end is covered in curious artifacts. as well as a large stack of papers. There's little else here save for the flickering bulb above you, the empty chair, and Joshua's dead body. You might consider leaving this place, as sitting in a dank basement with a fresh corpse is not an entirely pleasant experience. Make a sanity roll. If you succeed, lose 1 sanity point. If you fail, lose 1d3 sanity points. To look over the items, go to 210. To leave this place, go to 181. Well, first we'll make our sanity roll against 50. I'm going to go ahead and roll the d6 now, just in case I fail the roll. If I pass the sanity roll, I'll ignore it. Let's see, a 79, so I end up losing 3 sanity points. Because my sanity was only 50. So I go down to 47. And then let's look over the items. Go to 210. You stand over the table of curious artifacts, confident that they have something to do with the strange events in Esbury. You decide that it's best to look them over and glean what information you can from them. You begin by leafing through the stack of notes. You realize they contain some of the same characteristics that are written on some of the ancient items. You may be able to use these notes to assist in any translation attempts you wish to make. There is also an empty sack on the table that was used to bring those relics here. You are free to load them back up and take them with you. After examining each item, it will be added to your inventory and you will be redirected back to this entry or given the option to proceed as appropriate. You should not select any option more than once. When you're ready, feel free to leave. If you want to look over the journal, go to 240. Clay cylinders to 218. Gemstone altar to 230. Idol to 195. Check the bedroom upstairs, go to 202. Leave the house, go to 181. Let's start with the journal, because that was bought and that was stolen from us. So 240. Wait. Is that the same? Hold on. Oh yeah, 240. So this was the same journal that we had earlier. Yeah. Looks like this is the same entry we had earlier. So that will bring us back to 210. Which means we get the journal back. So now we'll look over the clay cylinders. Sends me to 218. You turn the hardened clay cylinders over in your hand, your eyes falling on the large cracks running through both items. Despite this damage, their solid construction has led to the cylinder's survival throughout the ages. The next most obvious quality is the strange writing that is plastered along the side of each cylinder. It's quite remarkable in that it doesn't resemble any language known to you. Using the notes on the table, you attempt to translate it. Make an archaeology roll. If you succeed, go to 204. If you fail, you are unable to translate them and should go back to 210. My archaeology is a 1, so I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to translate these. But we'll find out. A 9 is, well, I could spend 8 luck to translate them. And I think I'm going to. So that will bring my luck down from 40 to 32. So luck is actually a form of dice mitigation in Call of Cthulhu. So that brings me to 204. You turn the hardened clay cylinders over in your hand and squint to make out the tiny script pressed into their sides. Consulting the notes stacked beside you, you begin to work out a rough translation. The cylinders tell the story of the lake-mist green beings of Ib, with their bulging eyes, pouting flabby lips, curious ears, and voiceless mouths. It speaks of the origins of these strange beings, how they descended one night from the moon in a mist, and gave praise to the chilled sea stone of Bakrug beneath the gibbous moon. It goes on to describe their strange city of stone and their ritual destruction of precious metals to appease this detestable water lizard. The tale is perplexing and impossible, but, if true, it is rather frightening. You recall the green mist outside and note with alarm that the moon is gibbous tonight. As you place the clay cylinders in the sack, you glance over at the sea green idol nearby and are further chilled by what this might portend. Increase your Cthulhu Mythos skill by 2 percentiles, back to 210. So I'll make my Cthulhu Mythos skill at 2, and back to 210. Okay. Alright, so we've looked over the notebook again, and the cylinders. Now I think we'll look over the altar. That'll bring us to 230. Right? Yes, 230. You examine the extraordinary altar. The most readily apparent features beyond its size are the many gemstones set into its surface. They are of a greenish color and shine even in the half-light of the room. You also notice strange lettering written in broad strokes along the object's sides. The symbols are smeared and sloppily done, suggesting they were written with some haste. What you had originally taken for paint is, upon closer examination, dried blood. While you can't be certain, it would appear that this item has been involved in some tragedy. Using the notes on the table, you may be able to piece together a translation of the text written in blood. Another archaeology roll, which will bring us to 178 if we succeed. Failing sends us back to 210. Once again, archaeology is a 1, but luck is an option as well if we need to spend it. As long as it's not too much. An 89 would be way too much. That'll send us back to 210. So we've investigated the altar, and I think the last thing we have... That's back to 210. So the last thing we have is the idol. 195. You look the idol over. It's made of a sea green stone and chiseled in the likeness of a water lizard of some sort. The sculpture is grotesque and hideous, and the depiction of the lizard-like creature unnerves you. Still, the work is extremely well preserved and unquestionably ancient. You feel uncomfortable staring at the alien-looking artifact for too long, so you stow it away in the sack out of sight. Back to 210. So now we've checked out the idol, and I think that's everything we can look at. Yes. Let's check the bedroom upstairs at 202. You open the door to find a bedroom, much as you'd expected. The room clearly belongs to a bachelor, as the only feminine object is a set of lace sleepwear lying across the bed. You look to a nearby nightstand and find several framed photographs of Joshua and Amelia, so you assume the clothes are hers. Peeking out of a drawer in the nightstand is an open box of bullets, as well as several bottles of bootleg whiskey. You scan the rest of the room. The only other object of note is a dresser. You search it and find it to be full of men's clothing, the sort that Joshua would wear. However, as you are rifling through his things, you find an envelope. Turning it over, you see it's unsealed, and judging by the crumpled state of it, the letter inside has been read over several times. You pull the letter out and begin reading. It appears to be a correspondence between Joshua and a Dr. Weber, based out of Arkham. Weber is, apparently, a psychotherapist that Joshua sees on a monthly basis. According to the letter, the past few months have been quite difficult for Joshua. In addition to his criminal activities and his relationship with Amelia, he has been troubled by strange dreams, which Dr. Weber labeled as obsessive delusions. Joshua has a fixation with a particular dream of a beautiful city in a far-off land. He describes the city as made of marble and says that sometimes he wakes up crying because he has to leave it behind in his dreams. He also reports seeing a frightening lizard thing in the water off the shore of this strange city. Sometimes, in the night, it whispers that it knows the way to the city. Though the lizard thing scares him, he listens to the whispers. Joshua professes a deep desire to go to the city, though he doesn't know where it is or even if it's real. For his part, Dr. Weber assures Joshua that these things are completely fictitious and that he must find a way to return to reality and leave the delusions behind. You return the letter to its envelope, then slip everything back where you found it, thinking about how this affects the course of events here in Esbury. Silently, you return to the main area of the house. You may now investigate the basement or leave the house. To investigate the basement, go to 156. To leave the house, go to 81. Well, seeing as we've just been in the basement for like the last 20 minutes, I'm going to leave the house, but after that, but before that, we need to take a small break. Alright, so leaving the house brings us to 181. You decide that you've seen enough of Joshua's house and that you have no reason to linger here. You exit the building and close the door behind you. You look out into the fog and find it thicker than you remember. You can see almost nothing. Compounding the problem is the darkness, which has completely fallen while you were inside. Armed with new knowledge, you feel prepared to confront what lies ahead of you. You take a few steps out into the street and are shocked to find the town's cobblestones waterlogged. The lake's water level is rising, and Esbury is beginning to flood. Given earlier events, you suspect that this may not be entirely natural. Even if it is, the rapidly rising water is a serious threat in itself. You feel a twinge of fear, but overcome it and spur yourself into action. You know you must escape the flood, and that you must act quickly. If you know where to meet with Banyu, now is the time you may choose to do so. To search for higher ground and hope to avoid the rising waters, go to 211. To try to outrun the tide, go to 194. To meet up with Banyu, check the entry number noted on your investigator sheet, then go to it. We don't know where to meet up with Banyu, and trying to outrun the rising tide sounds extremely stupid, so I think we're going to search for higher ground and see what we can do with that. So 211. You try to find somewhere you can wait out the flood, somewhere at a high elevation that won't be consumed by the rising water. Thanks to the darkness and the fog, you won't be able to scan the town's skyline to look for such a place and will, instead, have to rely on your memory. The only place that comes to mind would be the nearby church. If the worst should happen, you could climb up into the bell tower to wait out the flood. You rush toward the house of worship. You see its solid gray stonework peeking out at you from the fog, providing a sense of comfort and security. You push open the church's large double doors and slip inside, quickly closing the doors behind you, in hopes they will at least buy you some time before the water seeps in. You rush to the stairs leading up to the bell tower and climb them as quickly as you can. You soon find yourself looking out over Esbury. The town itself is shrouded in mist, but from this high vantage point, you can see over the fog to the lake beyond. Large, undulating waves break the surface of the normally placid waters, and the stars and gibbous moon are brightly reflected from the dark backdrop. Finding yourself in relative safety, you finally have a moment to pause and reflect. You take a breath, bowing your head in thought, or perhaps prayer. Your mind is a whirl, but eventually a single thought breaks through, determining your course of action. If you know a ritual chant, now is the time you may choose to use it. Check the entry number noted on your investigator sheet, then go to it. Otherwise, go to 150. We don't know any ritual chants, so that brings us to 150. You resolve simply to wait it out. You have a wonderful view of the spectacle that unfolds. The waters of the lake rise continually and rapidly. It's now to a point where it must be over some of the buildings in Esbury, though you cannot see into the thick fog below. You wonder at the loss of life and property. Though the lake continues to rise, seemingly without source and without end, this is the least of the oddities that transpire. Through the mist, you spot scattered flames illuminating sections of the town. You find this especially strange, since there seems to be no discernible pattern or reason for it, especially in a place that must be half submerged by now. Perhaps the fires are on the roofs of the taller buildings, but what could the purpose possibly be? All the while, there is the screaming, the howls of people afraid of the water, the desperate cries of the lost, the startled shouts of those woken from sleep to find themselves in grave danger, and the more primal screams of abject terror. You glance back over toward the lake itself, wanting to turn your attention away from the horrible suffering in town. You see the water rising in great rippling waves, all emanating from a single central point. You try to find their exact origin. Bizarrely, the spot seems to correspond with the moon's reflection. You are unable to make out any details of what might be causing the waves, though. You absent-mindedly direct your gaze toward the gibbous moon hanging overhead and note yet another baffling sight. Great clouds of mist seem to be rising toward the moon from the ground, extending in long, wispy columns up into the heavens, or perhaps streaming down from above. You are uncertain of which, or if it even matters. You do not think it does. Looking back toward the town, you find it all beneath the water now, save for your little island. The waves crest a mere 12 inches, 30 centimeters below your feet, and you know there is no escaping the rising tide. Resigned as you are to your fate, you still aren't prepared for what happens next. The waves stop suddenly. Everything falls silent and still. Then, a long lizard-like head rises from the water. It is covered in scales colored like the sea. The detestable lizard thing's mouth opens, revealing rows of needle-like teeth as it emits a hissing sound that pierces the night and your very soul. And then its eyes open. Orbs of pure malevolence fix themselves on you. It watches you for a second, a minute, an eternity. And then the stones beneath your feet shift and you tumble into the water. You know it is the lizard thing's doing, though it hasn't moved since its head broke free of the lake. As you sink beneath the surface, you look upward and see the horrible lizard thing darting toward you in the light of the gibbous moon. You pray you'll drown before it takes you, but fate is not so kind. Your demise serves only to feed the horrible, detestable water lizard that is Bakrug, Great Old One, and doom of the cities of Sarnath and Esbury. You have died. Thank you for playing, and we hope you've enjoyed this adventure. Your visit to Esbury is over. The end. Well, looks like we won't need Wilbur's character sheet anymore, though that was a really fun adventure. We're not quite done yet today, because I have a product unboxing that came in on Monday, but before we get to that, I need to change my battery. I got this box in from Manscaped on Monday, but I haven't had time to unbox it until just now. So let's go ahead and crack this open and see what's in here. This should be my Peak Hygiene Plan box. Hopefully we can slice it down there. Okay, cool. Okay. Yep. Look at that. Thankfully we can't see into the box, but I do want to get the invoice out of shot, just to take a quick look at it. Okay. Alright. I'll go ahead and slice this canned air, preferably without slicing my own hand. Okay. Closing the knife carefully. In here we've got more shave mats. I usually just use a towel or just shave in the shower. Let's see what else we've got here. We've got more foot duster for spraying on the feet. Crop preserver, which is deodorant for the guys downstairs. And for the first time, I wanted to try something a little bit new. So we got a box here of their refined cologne. I've been curious about wearing cologne. I knew I wanted it to be a very subtle cologne, just because I haven't worn it much. But I'm open to trying it. So, looking at the box here, a modern statement of refinement and masculinity. This clean and manly scent will inspire the confidence to conquer all. So let's give this a quick little spritz and see what I think of it. At least I'm assuming that's how this is going to work. There's the bottle of it by itself, by the way. Whoa. Okay. There's the lid went flying. Spray it on this wrist. Ooh. I like that. Definitely not going to want to be too heavy with that, though. That much I can tell. Get that closed back up. Come on. Right. Okay, so that's back in the box. I can close that up. And then that will do it for this playthrough of Call of Cthulhu, Alone Against the Tide. Sunday, we're wrapping the summer of Lovecraft as we play Elder Sign. As for next week, we're going to finish my Tack Up Wargaming list on the channel as we play Target for Today from Legion Wargames. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.